There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. Moments so sudden, so violent in their revelation, that the person you were at the start of that night simply ceases to exist by the time the sun comes up. This is one of those stories. It begins with a bad decision, the kind made in desperation, made in darkness, made by someone who thought the worst thing that could happen to them was getting caught. They were wrong. They were so wrong. Because what waited for them in the back of that car was not a police siren, not handcuffs, not a judge with cold eyes and a gavel. What waited for them was something far worse, something that cannot be unseen, cannot be unfelt, and cannot be outrun no matter how fast you drive or how far you go. This is the story of a stolen car, a locked trunk, and the thing inside it that changed everything. This is the story that proves some crimes find you before you ever find them. And sometimes, when you open a door you were never supposed to open, the world on the other side is nothing like the one you left behind. It was a Tuesday night in late autumn, the kind of night where the cold comes early and the streets go quiet before midnight. The city, mid-sized, unremarkable, the kind of place people describe as fine when they mean forgettable, was settling into itself. Neon signs buzzed over empty parking lots, a gas station attendant scrolled his phone behind thick glass. Somewhere across town, a television played to an empty room. And on a street 3 blocks from the edge of the warehouse district, a man we will call Marcus stood in the dark between 2 streetlights watching a car. He was 26 years old. He had a record: petty theft, a possession charge from 4 years back, a short stint in county. He was not a violent man. He was not a careful man. He was, by most accounts, a man who kept making the same kind of small, stupid choices and paying the same kind of small, exhausting price. That night, he was broke. He owed money to someone who did not accept excuses, and parked 20 feet away from him, engine still faintly ticking from a recent drive, was a dark blue sedan with its windows fogged and its doors, as he would discover, unlocked on the driver's side. He told himself it was just borrowing. People in desperate situations always find a word that feels softer than the truth. He wasn't stealing, he was surviving. He would take it a few miles, dump it somewhere, walk away. Simple, clean, nobody gets hurt. He moved quickly, the way people do when they are trying to outpace their own conscience. He checked both directions on the street, nothing moving, nothing watching, or so he thought. He opened the door, slid into the seat. The interior smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, and something else, something underneath it, something he couldn't quite name in that first second. He told himself it was just an old car smell. He pulled the door shut, found the ignition wires beneath the steering column with the practiced ease of someone who had done this before, though not often and not recently. The engine turned over, the headlights came on, and Marcus pulled away from the curb and into the quiet street, telling himself the hardest part was already over. He drove without direction at first, just putting distance between himself and the spot where he had taken it. Left on Caldwell, right on Mercer, under the overpass where the sodium lights painted everything the color of old bruises. He turned the radio on low, a habit, something to fill the silence. A country song he didn't know. He turned it off again. The smell in the car was getting stronger, not overwhelming, not yet, but present in a way that made him keep breathing through his mouth without fully realizing he was doing it. He told himself the previous owner was a smoker, a heavy one. He told himself someone had left food in here and it had gone bad. He ran through the list of reasonable explanations the way a child runs through reasons a noise in the dark isn't what they think it is. He was 15 minutes into the drive when he noticed something else. The car sat heavy. Not dramatically so, not enough to make it undrivable, but enough that a man who paid attention to cars would notice. The back end rode low, like there was weight in the trunk, significant weight. He should have stopped then, he knows that now, but at the time his mind went to the most practical explanation it could find. Spare tires, tools, luggage, whatever people carry when they take long trips. He rationalized it so smoothly he barely even paused. He kept driving. He was thinking about where to leave the car, which neighborhood was quiet enough that no one would notice it parked until morning, which route got him back to his side of the city without passing any cameras he knew about. He was running logistics in his head, the operational math of a small crime. And then, without quite deciding to, he pulled into an empty lot behind a closed auto parts store and sat with the engine running for a moment, just to get his bearings. The smell had followed him the whole way. It sat in the car with him like a passenger he hadn't agreed to carry. And that's when the thought arrived. Not invited, not welcome, just there, fully formed, the way certain thoughts arrive when some part of your brain has already figured out what the rest of you refuses to accept. What if the weight wasn't luggage? He sat with that thought for nearly 2 minutes. He watched it. He turned it over. He pushed it away 3 times, and it came back each time heavier. He told himself he was being paranoid. He told himself he watched too many crime shows. He told himself that the smell was nothing, that the weight was nothing, that he was going to walk around to the back of this car, pop the trunk, look at a spare tire and a bag of jumper cables, and feel like an idiot. He told himself all of that, and then he got out of the car. The lot was silent. A single security light at the far end threw a cone of pale yellow across the cracked asphalt. There was no wind. His footsteps sounded too loud. He moved around the side of the car slowly, hand trailing along the cool metal of the body, and he stopped at the trunk. He stood there. He found the release, on this model a small lever just inside the edge of the license plate frame. He held it without pressing it. He breathed. He pressed it. The trunk opened slowly, the way trunks do on older cars, with a kind of mechanical exhale, a release of pressure, and then the smell hit him all at once, and he knew before he saw anything that he had been right. He knew before his eyes adjusted to the darkness inside the trunk. He knew before he reached for his phone and turned on the flashlight with a shaking hand. He knew, but knowing and seeing are different things, and seeing is the thing that stays. The man in the trunk was wrapped partially in a dark tarpaulin that had come loose at one end. He was adult, male, fully clothed. He was not moving. He had not been moving for some time. There were visible signs of trauma that Marcus would later describe to detectives in a voice so flat it sounded like he had used up all his available emotion in the parking lot and had nothing left. He stood there for what felt like an hour, but was probably 45 seconds. He stood there the way people stand at the edge of something they cannot step back from. Then he closed the trunk, not because he thought that would fix anything, not because he was trying to hide what he had seen. He closed it because some part of him, the oldest, most animal part, needed to put a barrier between himself and what was in there, even a thin one, even one that changed nothing. He walked away from the car on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. He sat down on the curb at the edge of the parking lot, on the far side of the car, and he sat there for a long time. His phone was in his hand. He had scrolled to the emergency call screen without remembering doing it. He sat on that curb in the cold with the dial screen glowing, and he made the calculation that every person in his position makes, the one where being the person who reports a crime collides violently with being the person who just committed one. He was in a stolen car. He had the car. There was a body. There was no version of this story in which he explained his presence that didn't begin with the part where he had taken the vehicle without permission. He thought about running. He thought about it seriously, the way you think about a real option. Just walk away, leave the car, go home, pretend the night happened differently. He sat with that option too. And then he thought about the man in the trunk. He thought about the fact that somewhere there was a family and they didn't know yet, and every hour that passed was another hour they spent not knowing, and that not knowing was its own kind of cruelty. He thought about the person who did this, who might still be out there thinking they had gotten away with it. He thought about all of those things, and then he pressed the call button. The dispatcher who answered later said that Marcus's voice was remarkably calm for someone in his situation. She said he gave clear information, the address of the parking lot, the description of the vehicle, the nature of what he had found. He stayed on the line. He did not run. When the first patrol unit arrived 6 minutes later, he was still sitting on the curb, still holding his phone, still on the line with the dispatcher. The officers approached him with their hands on their weapons, which was protocol, and he raised his hands before they asked, which was wisdom or defeat, depending on how you looked at it. What followed was the kind of night that never quite ends, even when the sun comes up. Marcus was taken in for questioning, he was read his rights, he was placed in a room with a table and a fluorescent light, and 2 detectives who asked the same questions in different orders for 3 hours. He told them everything,
The desperation, the debt, the car, the smell, the parking lot, the trunk. He told them because he understood by that point that the only currency he had was the truth and the fact that he had made the call. He told them because somewhere in the middle of that night, on that curb in the cold, he had made a decision about what kind of person he was going to be, and having made it, he was going to hold on to it regardless of the cost. The investigation that followed was not fast, and it was not simple. The vehicle was registered to a man in his late 40s who lived in a suburb 40 minutes from the city. He was identified as a small business owner with no prior criminal record, no known enemies, no obvious reason to be wrapped in a tarpaulin in the trunk of his own car on a Tuesday night in November. But investigations are patient things. They pull on threads. They look at phone records and bank statements and security footage,